Hello, and welcome to the Write Club podcast, where we take you behind the pages and into the fascinating world of writing. I'm Beth, and as always, I'm joined by my co host, Mary. Hi, Mary, how are you?
Hi Beth, I'm great, thanks. Today we're joined by the brilliant Ruth Kelly, award-winning journalist, best-selling ghostwriter, and now the author of heart-pounding thrillers.
Ruth has written four thrillers. Her latest, The After Party, is a Richard and Judy Book Club pick, as was her second book, The Escape, and she's currently in the Winter Book Club in T.G. Jones. The After Party is a gripping psychological thriller that we genuinely could not put down. I actually finished it in two sittings because I just needed to know what happened next.
Ruth, welcome to the Right Club. We're so excited to have you. First of all, where are you joining us from today?
I'm actually joining you from the location of the after party, which is Amsterdam, and everyone listening can't see, but for the benefit of you both, I have given you a view of the canals.
I know, it's beautiful. And that really is like exactly where the book is set as well. So that's perfect. And was that set there because do you live there or do you spend half your time
I'm
somewhere or another?
Yeah, so the actual after party is on this canal, um, which is the same canal as the Frank House is on, a bit further down. I'm half Dutch, so I've got a lot of family out here. I live here. I sort of split my time between the Netherlands and the UK because I have the English side of me and the Dutch side of me, and yeah, and I never actually intended when I wrote the after party. I have a lot of my books of the unusual destinations, and I don't think it didn't dawn on me until much later on that I should actually set a book where I know really well. Perhaps I mean a lot of people said that it sounded very it was really true to Amsterdam. So I think it does help actually sometimes writing about what you know, but that is going on a tangent there.
Well, before we get into anything else, can you give our listeners a little brief overview of the after party without any spoilers, obviously?
Without spoilers. Okay, it's about a girl, a woman called Becca, and she's moved to Amsterdam so that her husband Nathan, who works in restaurants, can live out his dream of opening a restaurant on one of the canals. And she thinks it's going to be, as a lot of people do, think it's going to be a lovely move to go from England and move abroad and start over. But it doesn't take long before she starts really feeling isolated and lonely in a city where she doesn't know anyone. She misses her friends. So when an old pal called Georgie from where she grew up, who she hasn't spoken to or seen in 10 years, shows up on New Year's Eve. Oh, her husband has disappeared on New Year's Eve to go on a work trip with his rather attractive chef who he's in the business with. That's a side note, that's quite important. Anyway, when her friend Georgie shows up, who's very glamorous um, and very outgoing, she drags Becca out from her home and says, "Come on, let's go on a night out in Amsterdam." And that's what happens. And they go out and through Georgie's connections, they find a really glamorous after party. And then what starts as a really fun night out starts to spiral out of control when Georgie disappears from this after party, and then Becca becomes the prime suspect in her disappearance.
Brilliant description. I know you said just before we started recording that that's the worst question on the list, but I felt like you did a pretty perfect explanation there. I don't know how I would have explained it any different. So
Yeah, thanks. Maybe I have been saying it over and over to lots of people, and it's embedded in my brain somewhere.
And the pacing in the novel is relentless. And it's one of those books where it's like I was reading it in bed and I was just thinking, okay, I'll just read one more chapter and then I'll put it down. Just one more chapter and then I'll put it down. Which I love books like that. But how did you approach the tension and momentum when plotting a thriller like this?
That's a good question. I think readers generally have less patience these days. You know, they want things quickly. And so I deliberately will end a chapter on a cliffhanger. So, I mean, that's completely deliberate. And how I get to that cliffhanger, I partly know I've already drawn up the plots in my head. Well, I have got a loose plot on paper, and then I think those cliffhangers generally come naturally to me when I'm writing the chapter. And sometimes it's a surprising sentence. Actually, this is a nice trick when you're writing. Sometimes you think that you're going to round off the chapter, and then you think, well, what if I deleted that last sentence that I've written? It's suddenly a different chapter. It actually only takes only because it just takes a little tiny edit sometimes, and you think, well, that's just posed a question now because I haven't completed the chapter. So I think it's tricks like that. It doesn't need to be much, you don't want like if you're always breathless and it's about getting the tempo right. You want it to be fast, but you don't want it to be non-stop that you're thinking, oh my God, like now I've just almost got PTSD from too many like cliffhangers that they lose their effect because you just think, well, it's going to end on another cliffhanger. So you've got to get the tempo right. So just measure it where some are really big cliffhangers where they make your sort of jaw drop, and others are smaller, more subtle cliffhangers that also make you want to read on, but not with that huge dramatic effect.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you did that perfectly. It worked for me anyway. Because
Oh,
I
good.
read it in literally two sittings, and I think the first half of the book that I started reading it one evening, and I don't think I went to bed until like 2, 3 a.m. because
Oh.
I just was like, I need to stop at a point where I'm happy to stop thinking about the book so I can sleep. Um, but I've really struggled to find a point where I was happy to stop. So if I didn't have work the next morning, I probably could have stayed up
Oh wow, oh, that's
and read
very
the whole
nice of you to
thing.
say. Thank you. I mean, that was completely deliberate, so I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry that you didn't get much sleep.
That's fine. I caught up on it on the weekend, so it didn't matter too much. And your journalism background really shines through in the authenticity of the characters that you created and the situations that they were put in. How do you balance factual realism with the dramatic storytelling? And was there any part of the story that was real, came from any inspiring stories that you'd experienced?
Yeah, 100% actually. All my stories come from news ideas. I read the news every day, and it often sparks an idea for the book. In fact, I think all my books are probably sparked by ideas in the news. Um, And for this one, even though he's a smaller character and a really loathsome character, it's this TikTok detective called Jamie who's on the scene. So he gets out. There's this guy called Jamie, and he's pretty rough, and he is on the scene really quickly to try and uncover the mystery behind Georgie's disappearance. And he is doing it to get followers and to get likes, and he's doing these live feeds. And that there was a lot, well, there is still a lot in the press about, self-acclaimed detectives, about armchair detectives. But I particularly wanted to focus on the TikTok detective because these are the ones that are really um, getting a lot of bad press around crime scenes because they turn up with their videos and they record them. And yeah, there's been some very big cases in the news of this happening, and how TikTok detectives are arrested for like trampling across crime scenes. And I wanted to there's a lot of stories where you feature a podcaster, or someone who just is doing a podcast about an old crime, a cold case. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do what's actually really happening now with these TikTok detectives, and how they're not seen as good people. They're seen as like scavengers really, um, just doing anything they can to get people to watch and join in. And um, I'll come back to the case that I've just had a bit of a brain blank about the case, but there was a big case. But I don't want to get her name wrong, but the woman who disappeared, and they were searching the river for ages.
Oh, yeah, and they said that it was menopausal symptom.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and there was a
absolutely.
lot that drew in a lot of conspiracy theories, um, a a lot of TikTok detectives. There was one who got arrested down there for he was getting 1 million views on his thing, and that was really a massive case about it and how actually gross it was. So I created this character because I wanted to show I needed a character to show an investigation happening, but it was an investigation with a difference in how he was using it, breaking into the after party house to sort of do a live feed to show all his viewers where Georgie disappeared from, and then he's interacting with his viewers live. So they're sort of going, oh, go and do this and do that. And I think that's very true to what happens at the moment.
Very
And also
disrespectful, isn't it? And it muddies
really
the...
disrespectful. And there was that young lad that who went missing on the island as well, with his friends. And he was and then again he ended up just walking after a night out with his friends, and he disappeared, and there were all these theories about where he got to, and I think he stumbled and fell down in the end, but it just created chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, the you're very conflicted reading the after party because you kind of want to like him a little bit, but also there's very also real part of the book where the police just weren't taking Becca seriously. Um, and we're kind of like, oh well, she's probably like she'll turn up. And you can see the frustration growing in her, and you almost think that, oh, this TikTok detective is taking it more seriously than the actual police. But in the same way, he's like really affecting the investigation, um, and could really be upsetting a lot of people. So yeah, I think that was a really nice spin, and I love books like that where it's written from different perspectives and different timelines, and it kind of jumps back and forward. And I think he did that really cleverly.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was what I wanted you to think of him. Like he was pretty grim, but maybe there was something slightly that you could see in him. That he
Mm.
was a bit of a rough diamond, I think, perhaps.
You've had an incredibly successful career as a ghostwriter, working on real life stories that are often intense, emotional, and high stakes. How did that experience shape the way you approach writing fiction?
Um, it's I think it's structurally it was probably the main thing. Um, when I was given my first job as a ghostwriter, I was really thrown in the deep end, like in a serious way. I was actually so a lot of the books that I wrote for other people were not given to me by publishers, but ideas that I decided through, like I thought were good through my looking through the newspapers and finding people. And I would approach them and ask if they would collaborate with me, which is kind of actually unusual for a ghostwriter. It's often a ghostwriter works for a publisher, just needs a ghostwriter and they pay you a flat fee and you come in and you do the job. It's like a job. Um, but so I would find these people because they interested me. I'd read the newspapers, and hence that sort of leaks into what I do now, still reading the newspapers for ideas, but now I'm translating that into a fiction idea rather than thinking perhaps that might make a good person to write a book with. So that's one part of it. I um, so I was thrown in the deep end. My very first job was a challenge. It was totally bizarre. There was a couple, and I was doing writing sort of quite tragic stories of the this misery memoir genre that was around years ago, where they did true life stories of terrible things that happened to people. And the publisher gave me a challenge that this couple were anonymous in the paper. If I could find them and talk them into doing a book, then I would get my first book deal with them. And so I did. I found them. They were living in France. I went out to France and I interviewed them, but I didn't know how to write a book at all. In fact, I actually didn't read that much back then, because I was so um, I was so swamped in. I was a news reporter, sort of like for all the national papers. I would go out on all the big stories. I was really It was a really stressful job. And I'd get these sent out on these big breaking news stories. And I don't think reading was ever part of my like I could ever fit it into my life. So I actually didn't have anything really to base it on. I just had the story, and I had to that I put down on a tape recorder, um, on a dictaphone, and I had to turn it into a book. And I look at this book now, it's so hilarious. Like the first chapter is ridiculously short. It's not even really a chapter. But then as the book goes on, they just gave me a deadline, like 2 months to write it. This just write it. And I said, how do you write a book? And you'll figure it out. It really was like that. And I think that that sort of lesson teaches you how to it just makes you, because of the time stakes, because of that, you don't have too much time to think about it. And I realized as the book went on that I was able to create these chapters with cliffhangers, and it just became sort of, you listen to someone's story and then you turn it into something that's going to be gripping. And I guess there might be people out there thinking, well, I don't know how to do that, write a chapter. But perhaps the answer from what I'm trying to say now, when I'm rambling on, is that if you don't think too hard about it or too much about it and just go for it and throw yourself in and just do it, it'll work itself out a bit because you're not overthinking it. And I think that's exactly what happened with me. I just didn't have time to think. I had a huge deadline. I had a massive information that I needed to get down on the paper, and I had to tell it in a way that was compelling. And I did make mistakes at the start of the book with these little short chapters, but then they started to iron out because I kept going. And then that was it. And then I look back at this book, and it's actually really well written, and in a level of detail that I wouldn't have done, because I still had this journalist edge to me, and where you have to be really factually accurate about everything. So the level of detail in this book is insane compared to some of my other books. It's fascinating. Um, but yeah, just don't overthink it, I think. And if you're having with structure, and if you're having problems, map it out. This whole sort of just pantser and throw yourself in, I think is amazing if you're gifted in that way. Incredible, what a gift. But most people aren't gifted like that, and it just like write a skeleton of a plan out, and then you'll know. I mean, that's what I did with my ghost books. I would listen to someone's story, and I would not listen to it again. And from the memory of listening to them over the 2 weeks that I was interviewing them, I would write down their story in a structure that was going to be interesting to the reader, taking away things that they told me that might be slightly boring. They're interesting for them, but I think, well, the reader's probably not going to be that interested in it. And then I laid it out, and then I went back into the tapes, the recordings, and I would listen to them, and then sort of um, bulk it out in quite a big way. But I knew what I was doing because I knew the story there on the page already.
That's probably quite an interesting piece of advice for novelists. The whole, if they're telling you something which is only interesting to them, and sort of as a third party, you can see that and edit that. So that's an interesting way to look at your own work, I would think, as well. You try and read it as if you are not you, almost.
Mm.
I did this new thing with the after party where I took a little break after I'd written it, and I wrote it really quickly. Um, so I think I wrote it in maybe just 3 months. Um, and then I stood back, and then I pretended I just like pretended I was an editor. And I maybe took 2 weeks out, and I looked at it and thinking, if I was an editor, what would I look at this critically, and what would I take out that, basically kill your darlings, but in a different way. I structurally looked at it, and I thought, does that really work? Is that really for my own benefit because I like the way that I wrote that? But I think that is definitely a key thing. The two things that I think, if you stumble over something when you're writing, and I'm not saying about the people that are trying to get started and they're umming and ahhing, and they're really analyzing what they're writing, thinking it's not perfect. I mean, don't do that. Just get writing. But if you're in the flow of your writing and you're getting, you're getting your words down, it's all going quite well, but you stumble over something and it's niggling you. I think personally, 90% of the time there is something wrong there. Um, and and you should look at that. You should look at that. Why if I'm stumbling over it, someone else is going to stumble over it. That's what I think is that. And that's the same thing when you're getting people's full stories, when you interview people for ghostwriting, people tell you their life stories and their points of their life that they think is fascinating, and it probably really is for them, and it's lovely. But you think the reader might be really not fascinated by that. And and it's a careful balance of writing a book that's going to please the person that you're writing for, but also, you've got to write a book that's going to sell, and you have to be diplomatic about it and tell them that it's really beautiful. We love this, but I think this is probably not for the book. And that probably all comes down to pace. It all comes down to pace. I think you just keep driving a plot and a story forward, whether it's someone's life story, whether it's a thriller. I don't think readers these days want to be slowed down that much. And as brutal as that sounds, in what I'm doing, in my kind of, really like sort of commercial thriller. I'm not talking about the more beautifully written books, which you can linger more over the writing. I'm talking about sort of commercial books. I think you just drive it forward.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, really interesting. Both The Escape and The After Party have been Richard and Judy Book Club picks, which is a huge achievement. What did that recognition mean to you at this stage of your career?
It was I just honestly I just couldn't believe it. Like I know that I still can't I still can't even really believe it. It's mad. Some people write books for forever and they don't get Rich and Judy nominated. And I get it on my second and my fourth book. It was nuts. That's all I can say. It was nuts. When I got it when I heard about The After Party, um getting it for the second time, I just was like, what? I was just like, what? This is crazy. But it also made me think, I'm doing the right thing. Like whatever I'm doing, whatever formula it is, it's working right somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So just it was a really good confirmation, because I think somewhere, writers always doubt themselves, and they always it's basically an official stamp saying that your book or your work is commercially popular, and you're doing the right thing. So I think that's what it did more than anything. And I was totally blown away, and I think the feeling of seeing it on the shelf on the with the other picks, because the lovely thing about it is it goes for a season. It's there on the shelf, and TG Jones for not just a couple of weeks or a month. It's there for it's still there now. I think it came out on the 12th of December. So it's a really long spell on the shelf. And it's just it is a magical moment to see it there. And to have, someone, famous people like Richard and Judy pick it. It is like, I can't, without sort of sounding like an idiot, I can't say that. I just think, wow, like I just, best moment ever times two.
Wow. Yeah, it's a massive achievement. So congratulations on that. It's mind blowing. Something that only most authors could only kind of dream of. So yeah, what an achievement. And the after party was just one of those books where I just wanted to shake some of the characters. The secondhand frustration was real. And was there a particular moment when you realized psychological thrillers were your jam and were the space you kind of wanted to commit to creatively?
So was it Becca that you wanted to shake?
Yes, mostly, yeah, but there was kind I think because there was a lot of things without giving away any spoilers, there was a lot of times where I was just saying to her in my head, like, just tell somebody these things that you're experiencing, or just speak to your husband, or just do this, or like keep on at whatever it is you're doing. And she would change. She'd decide that she was going to do the opposite of what I wanted her to do, which was another reason why I think I stuck with it so and read it so quickly, because I needed to know that there was going to be a good ending for her, or I was hoping that there was going to be an ending where she was going to get everything that she needed, and it was all going to turn out okay for her. So I just wanted to shake her.
Yeah, I worked a lot on the characters. I mean, she's definitely sort of weak at the start, and a lot of people said they were really annoyed with her. And then she has quite a strong character arc without giving any spoilers away, and and changes quite a bit. And I think that was one of the things I worked on a lot, both the character of Georgie and of um, Becca and their friendship. I really went into character a lot more in this book than I have on maybe my others, which might have been focused more on pace and thrills. Um, I really wanted to examine the friendship dynamic and then, how both women transform throughout the book. Anyway,
Mm.
what was your actual question before I like derailed you?
So was there a particular moment when you realized psychological thrillers were where you wanted to be?
Let me think. Was it? Well, I think it's important to write about what you enjoy. So I like reading that genre and I obsessively watch every TV show that comes out and binge watch the series immediately. So when it's a thriller or something around that, and I don't bother with the rom-coms on Netflix that much. So I think everything pointed towards me doing that because that's what I enjoy. And I think that's also something really important to note. I mean, if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to write a book or because romanticy is selling really well, I'm going to write that book. I think you've got to love that genre. Don't just think you're going to cash in on that and it's going to do well because it will come across on the page. I think you've got to write about what you love and what really gets you going. Otherwise, I think you'll see the readers will see that disconnect because readers are really smart and I think they'll see that disconnect in the words. Yeah, so do what you write about what you love and what a story that you actually really want to write that's really you're burning to write it because you've got to live with it for 6 months to a year. I mean, I write quickly, but on average, you could do the book in a year or something. And so you got to think that book's going to be with me for a year every time I wake up. You got to think about what you really enjoy when you write that book. It's going to bring you back to the page every day because I can tell you when it's the same pattern. You start with great enthusiasm, you hit around 30,000 words, and you're thinking, my my plot's going wrong. You have a mini breakdown.
Mhm.
You don't know whether you should do it anymore. You want to quit.
Mhm.
You think, well, I've got to 30,000 words. I should probably carry on. And
We're
then you
very glad.
carry
I was going to say, I'm sure we're very glad that you did.
and then you carry on and then you start and then there's the mid book thing that throws you again and then you see the ending and then you're like shooting towards the ending but you've got to love what you do so you get over those humps and I'm not alone in saying these humps are there. I mean, you ask any author and they almost
Mhm.
hit the same things every time. I think it's just the way that books affect people when you write them. So yeah, it's really, really important that you believe in the story. Otherwise, you will not find it very easy to get through those humps.
Mm.
Yeah. Could you talk us through a typical writing day? Are you structured or does it change depending on the project? Obviously, thrillers often live or die by their endings. So, how much do you plan the resolution in advance and how much do you allow yourself to discover the story as you're writing it?
I would say that I my twists are quite planned because they're quite unusual. And I don't think that would come to me if I was just pantsering it and just going along. But at the same time, so I do a like I did with my ghost books. I would structure it out so it's there. It's probably we're looking at a couple of pages worth of notes, if that. It's there and it's in my head. It's really in my head, so I know it. But I've spent a long time doing this, maybe several months, and it's going round and around. And I'm just thinking it's like I was going to say Jenga. It's not like Jenga. What's it called? Tetris.
Mm.
When you're trying to like get those pieces in the right place. So when they're in the right place, then I put it down on the paper and I have a structural. I know what the book is looking like. Now I don't want to overdo that because then it's going to feel boring when I come to the page, and there's got to be a level of fluidity when I write. Otherwise, I don't think that the special moments will happen when you're writing. So I guess it's an in between of having structure, but also leaving place to be fluid. I do often sort of know the ending. Harlan Coben says like you should almost work back from the ending, and it's a really good tip if you're stuck on your story. I do think that because I think the ending is really important. And if you don't know where the book is going and you're lost when you're plotting it, think of the ending. I think that's a really good tip because then you think, well, how's this going to resolve? And then it actually might let you work out what's going wrong earlier in the book because it all comes to the end. So I do know, but sometimes I surprise myself when I'm writing. I think, oh, in the last 60,000 words, or because a thriller is roughly around 80,000 words for me anyway, 80 to 90. I think, well, that's a better ending. And because I've got that fluidity with the structure. But I roughly know. My writing day is I like to work in cafes because I get a real buzz from being around people. I have an ability to block out noise. I think it's because when I was a journalist, I always on the hop with my laptop and you had to file the copy from wherever and you had to zone in so tightly on the story for deadline that I would just go into McDonald's or wherever it was to file this blimming story. Honestly, it's very funny with journalists about where they have to file these stories from. It's like upside down pretty much or like whatever. You just got to file it and you become really adept at blocking out noise and focusing. And I think I've carried that through to my fiction writing. So unless it's really loud, intrusive noise, like at Joe and the Juice, where they put on like dance tracks, and I just can't cope.
Bit of
Like,
techno.
like techno music, I can zone it out. I can
Wow.
zone it out. And then I like it. I like the buzz. I like the bustle. It's not like I'm looking at people going, "Oh, you'd be a good description for my book," and kind of nose around. But I do think it's nice seeing people. I think it just breaks you up from being in your house all day. So I will go out to a cafe, have a really strong double espresso, or like go hard, and then I might have another one actually.
Wow.
Uh, and then I'll write, and then I'll take a break, and then I'm a night owl, so I will write in the evening. If I don't I don't like to live by too many structures. I think
Mm.
I'm a bit of a free spirit. I don't like it when I don't like putting any constraints on myself. So I just go with what I feel like. But that is a rough day. Like that is a rough day.
Yeah, you kind of have to just do what feels right in the time. I feel like when you put almost like restraints on yourself to say, right, I have to block out this time and I have to block out this time and I've got to do this then and this then, it almost makes it feel like a job and makes it, well, I mean, it is a job, obviously, but it makes it feel like a chore that you have to do. And for some people, that will just really put them off, and you'll find any excuse like doing the dishes or washing your hair to avoid doing that task. And I know I'm like that, and I know that if I'm very similar to you, if I put like restraints in place, I just won't do it. So I have to be like you and just kind of work fluidly with what I know that I need to get done, but doing it kind of on my own terms. And I really wish that I could work in a cafe or something.
No, you can't. You
I
find it hard.
just, I get so distracted. Like I have a very like ADHD brain, so I have to either be in like silence or I have to
Mm.
have like the TV on in the background that will force me to stay sat down. Otherwise, I'll get up and wander or I don't know, you'll see somebody having a coffee and I'll be like, oh, I'll best go get one just because they're having one. Or there'll be conversations happening around me and I just will find myself focusing on everything that they're saying and nothing on what I'm doing.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I have this, yeah, I can definitely zone out, really zone. And then I can zone into what someone's talking about next to me and I'm thinking, that was a bit strange. And then I can zone out again.
Oh,
Um, but I know what I need to do. I need to write that. If I need to hit this deadline, there is an actual number of words I need to write per day to hit that. It's like the math is there.
hmm.
And it is important to realize that because as you said, this is a job. As it's not as romantic as people think it might be. It's discipline. You need real discipline to do it. But I think if I think about that 1,000 words, like some people will wake up and go, I need to write 1,000 words by lunchtime. And if I think that, I panic. So I just confident that that's going to happen. But don't say those words to myself. You need to write the 1,000. I know I need to write 1,000 words by lunchtime, but I try and I try and not tell that to myself and
Mm,
trick my mind and just keep it a bit more like relaxed. And that way, often I write more than that.
yeah.
Because I'm not telling myself that's what I need. I'm not like what's it called a drill master in the army way. Is it a drill master? Like
Yeah.
you're telling yourself, come on, you need to get up and do 5 press-ups and then get that word down. But
It's
then
really,
there's really successful business people out there who have these diaries. These diaries that are really trendy where they got every hour mapped out in it and then they do blocking and these people are really, really successful. So there might be some real, there might be some sense in actually being really organized. And perhaps if I was more organized, I might do even more work, but I don't know. I don't feel quite ready to commit to that.
well, at
I
least
think we're
six
all
books a
different, aren't
year.
I mean, maybe you never know. I'll be like literally churning them out because I've got my diary next to me that's
Yeah,
time blocked.
makes all
With
the difference.
yeah,
It's really
so
interesting though how people work so differently to each other and just as people have to do what is right for them at the end of the day and
mm,
you can't force yourself to work in a way that seems more structured but doesn't feel right to you. So it's really fascinating when we're having these conversations on the podcast to see how different everybody's kind of working life is. And I know you've given us so much advice and loads of different tips for writers, but do you have one piece of advice you could give to writers who've kind of got a strong idea in their head, but they're struggling to turn that into a finished manuscript?
I, as I said before, structure it. I think often you're struggling because you can't see where it's going. uh, and that lack of not knowing where it's going is not giving you confidence to start. Or you start because you like writing and you're really enjoying it and you probably write really well, but then you don't know where it's going, so you stop and you don't keep going. And I think that is the key. As I said, from these really special, talented people like, Lisa Jewell is famously known as to be a pantser and will create a character and see where the character wanders to. Unless you have that gift, I think, and maybe you do, but you just haven't discovered it yet. Just try with structuring it. Just and another thing is really ask your question. This is actually some good tips. So, if you were to write the back of the book, and it was going to be on in a bookshop, and you were going to pick it up and you're going to read the back of the book, what would it say? And then what it says is what your book should be about. And it's that elevator pitch, it's that hook, it's like knowing, ask yourself, what is this book about? What do I want to say in this book? What's the actual if you're writing a thriller, what's the mystery? What's the question? Who is missing? who kills so and so, what are the stakes? And actually, if you're that would really make you work out how to start doing your book, because then you could see it, you could see what you're trying to answer. And then from answering that question, you can do a loose plan about how that's going to look, how you're going to answer that with these different characters, how it's going to, how you're going to keep the suspense. And then I would start writing if you're struggling, rather than starting and then hitting a wall maybe after 5,000 words because you just don't know where to take it.
I think that's brilliant advice, especially for people looking to write thrillers, because that is the main thing or the main reason you're going to pick up a book is if you read the blurb and it draws you to it, that's what's going to sell. So you have to make that almost like you say, your pitch, to make sure that people are going to enjoy your book. And it has to do what it says on the tin. So if you're saying that this is what your book's going to be about, it actually has to be what's inside the book. So yeah, I think that's brilliant advice. And are there any books or authors that have inspired you recently within the thriller genre that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Well, I'm discovering Alice Feeney at the moment because I watched His and Hers on Netflix, and I decided to read the book, and I really I'm really enjoying it. So I think I like to do that often when a book is adapted. I like to sort of see how it was adapted, and if I ended up watching the show first, um, or the other way around, I'll quickly read the book before I watch the adaptation. So Alice Feeney, His and Hers, I think is really brilliant. That is a perfect example of not really knowing who to trust. You've got a central mystery. Um, a woman is found dead, but you don't know who's killed her. And the two main protagonists look really suspicious, and they're married, and it's pinging between the two. So it's quite a high concept idea, and hence the His and Hers. It's between these two, between a couple. And so I'd really recommend reading that. That's a perfect example of a great twisty thriller that you don't really know what's happening or who to trust, and you've got a central mystery trying to work out who killed the woman.
I've got that on my list to watch and read as well, but I have to read it before I watch it, otherwise I just won't read it.
Ah,
But I'm also reading the John Marr's Dead in the Water at the minute.
okay.
Fully recommend that as well. His books are disturbing, but they are very good. So I'd fully recommend that too. I know I didn't get asked for a book recommendation, but you just
Oh,
reminded me.
John Mars is really lovely. He's actually been a massive supporter, and supporter of my work, and
Oh,
yeah, I really like him a lot.
oh, that's brilliant. He actually lives where my most of my family are from in Northampton, and it always
Oh,
makes me really fascinated when I read his books because most of them, well, I think all of the ones that I've read, have all been set in Northampton.
hmm.
So it's interesting to hear him talk about the town that I know quite well. So yeah, re I really enjoy his books.
Ruth, could you tell us what's next for you? Are there more thrillers on the horizon or other projects that you're excited about?
I can't tell you much, but I'm working on a thriller at the moment. I'm not stopping. I'm going to carry on writing, and it's what can I tell you? It's got a really vivid location again, um, which is sort of central because all my books are kind of in these vivid locations, which is sort of central to the plot. And it's basically a toxic family situation. That's what's really behind it all. And it's got a news hook as well as usual. So I've got all the things. I've ticked all the boxes I do. I've got the news hook. I've got a really vivid location. I've got lots of twists. I worked really hard on the twists on this one. And yeah, I'm gonna go after I speak to you and have my double espresso and a cafe and get down to writing. Might have another one. Might have two double espressos and then completely wired up and hyperactive.
That sounds amazing. I'd love to go and have a double espresso in Amsterdam right now.
I mean, I have to say that is one apart from obviously the dodgy coffee shops. Um, the cafes so you call there's the coffee shops and the
Hmm.
cafes are really gorgeous because they're just everything is just little around here, little spaces. So you kind of just go to these really cute cafes that are on the canal, and then you park up and you write. I have to say, I mean, that is one of the reasons I go out to the cafe, because they're just so lovely around here.
Mm.
Um,
Oh,
but on the downside, Amsterdam has been voted, I think, the most expensive city in the world, or one of them, and I can vouch for that. My coffees are a lot of money. You're looking at, like, on average, five €5 a
wow.
coffee. It's a lot.
Wow.
It's a
That is a
lot.
lot. That is a lot of coffee. A lot of coffee and a lot of money.
A lot of money. It's really, really expensive here. So
Wow.
yeah, so even when if you're thinking, I'm really annoying talking about my lovely day, bragging about my lovely day in a coffee shop here, it's definitely going to be hurting my pocket.
Yeah, you have to sell some more books
Yeah,
and pay for
yeah.
it.
Well, we definitely recommend our listeners go out and buy your books. And we would like to say thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's been really lovely. I hope that my tips will somehow help someone or inspire them. I mean, just get going. Just start. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
Brilliant advice.
absolutely. I'm sure you have inspired a lot of people listening to this episode today. So thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, like we said, really recommend the book, The After Party, and all of your other books. And we're really excited to see what comes from you guys next. Thanks for tuning into the Write Club. We hope you enjoyed this episode and feel inspired to keep writing. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at Writers Online, your go-to for writing tips, competitions, and exclusive updates. Plus, you'll never miss an episode of the Write Club. Until next time, happy writing.